Video. Just thought I'd shoot one that has a bit of an interesting topic. For me, I've just staked about £2,000 on this account. You can see the stakes don't really go over £100 because that is what this account is suited to. I don't want them to get the wrong idea. Think I've just suddenly gone mad. You know, something has happened in my life and I need to gamble. I placed one bet of £50 each way. The rest of them are anything from 10 each way to £50 each way overall, but about £2,000 there. And I should bag a reasonable amount of EV, probably about £240, I would say, in EV overall. Now, obviously, everything has to be done in EV. We do that whether we're betting in the US or Canada or the UK, wherever it may be, okay, Europe. If there's no free bets involved, it has to be done on a mathematical edge. And the mathematical edge, particularly the model that it follows, is the EV model. I don't mean EV as an electric vehicle. I mean EV as in odds that are basically inflated. And most of my videos show the profits of that. It's just so everyone knows that they can trust the EV. Because you've got to remember that bookmakers themselves are using EV. All the odds they're giving you mostly are going to be bad odds. In other words, the EV for them is positive and negative for you. The expected value, in other words, is one that does not suit the gamblers. And that's what gives a bookmaker a business. But this video particularly, I would say, is more so about when you should vary your stakes and how to vary them. You know, no matter what type of EV structure you use. I mean, if you're betting on even on football, you know, you can have EV there without two ups or anything. You can have EV on any sport. It's always going to be where the odds are more favourable than they should be. In other words, the payout is not equal to the probability. So obviously in the UK, when you look at exchanges, you know all the bookmakers follow these exchanges. And when the odds drop on the exchange, typically the odds across the bookmakers will also drop. But some of them, of course, that doesn't happen very quickly. Some of them don't drop their odds as soon as they should. So what you end up with is a higher price than it should be. For example, if you've got bookmakers that are, you know, all putting Ireland to beat England, for example, I don't think it's going to happen, but it might. Sorry, Ireland fans. No, we don't know. But anyhow, if the bookmakers, let's say Bet365 is pricing Ireland at 6-1, and there's a 7.6 lay, obviously there's a big discrepancy there. And that essentially is why, you know, you're going to lose money in the long run, or you're going to have a negative EV. You would expect mostly if you had fair odds that it would be near a 6.6-1 what you're paid. But in any case, if you see the odds for Ireland drop rapidly, you might find that the bookmaker doesn't catch up as quickly, and therefore you have EV. Now, the amount you stake really depends on how high the odds are. In other words, how likely the bet is to win versus the EV you're getting. And there's a good well, you can use various structures for this. You can use Kelly's criterion or just a standard rule, which, you know, I mostly present to people who don't want to do all the calculations. But in any case, if you've got high odds and high value, the Kelly's criterion generally will lead you to stake a bit more, which can be a bit dangerous for some. So, you know, as a general rule, I would say if you've got high odds, then just lower your stakes anyway, because the variance has to be something that you can fit into. You've got to be able to deal with the swings in win and loss over time, regardless of the value. But if there is a lot of value on your high odds bet, you could bet slightly more. So, for example, if you had 20-1 for X amount of goals, let's say, and the value on that bet was enormous, you had massive EV, you could perhaps bet maybe a bit more than you normally would, 50% or so more than you would for odds at 20-1. But if you've got a low odds bet with tons of value, that is obviously a good time to bet more or a larger stake, but never go over your maximum size bet. So like I said, for mine, you know, I'm never going over the staking rules I have. If the EV on a bet is exceptional, then I might change my stake and bet slightly more. But I'm always wary of how high the odds are. So even if the EV is high, but the odds are high, I know, even though I've got a lot of value on that bet, it could take me a while to win and then go into an upswing. So it's all about being careful with that, essentially. But you should absolutely never go above your max stake like I have here. And on £2,000 of bets, EV betting like this, I would expect a reasonable return. But of course, I could lose money today. But in the long run, as you've seen through all my videos, I tend to make money. And that's why our academy is growing and growing, because more and more people are realizing that they don't have to gamble. And it's actually better to bet this way than it is to just, spaffle your money up the wall routinely. It's much better to do it this way. But like I said, you can get EV on anything. It's just the case that when you're betting on, let's say, a golf tournament, you could have very high EV on a player, but you got to remember the chance of you winning, because there's all these other players in the tournament. It goes down, your variance goes up because there's so many other opponents. So you could have a massive value bet on Matt Wallace, but you just got to remember there's all of these other players within the tournament as well. So it's something to be wary on. You wouldn't then say, oh, you know what, I'm going to smash all my money on this player because there's really high EV, because your variance, particularly in golf, is going to be high because there's so many participants within that tournament. You can see 80 selections here for this. So there could be value on this, absolutely, and you would have to check with your sportsbook. But just make sure you understand that even if there's loads of value, but there's lots of other outcomes, you need to just keep your stake at a standard level, and you need to vary your stakes higher when it's appropriate, when you've got lesser outcomes and higher value. I'll probably do more on this as we go, but we'll see the results of today's stakes later. If you want to learn how to bet for income, as I have for 7 years now, just go underneath. We've got a growing academy and the best methods available. See you in the next one.